This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. K-State and Washburn law professor Roger McEowen starts today's show as he discusses zoning classifications and the impact they can have on people's dreams of living in rural areas. Keeping the show rolling is Jeff Tucker, Executive Director of the K-State Technology Development Institute, as he explains what the Institute and the Rural Technology Innovation Assistant Program are providing to communities and its entrepreneurs. The Beef Cattle Institute's Brad White, Bob Larson, and Dustin Pendell wrap today's show as they consider the ideal number of cows per bull on part of a Cattle Chat episode. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Wednesday show talking with K-State and Washburn law professor Roger McEowen. Roger, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Shelby.
Roger, today wanting to discuss a quick way that can kill your rural dream, and what is that?
Well, it can be zoning issues or local ordinances or some type of rule that restricts what you can do on your property. And if that conflicts with what you were hoping you'd be able to do, that can kind of wreck your dreams.
And when you say zoning, what do you mean by that?
Well, that's just a process by which local governments, now typically I'm talking for our purposes today, county or municipal zoning, that's how they regulate land use within their jurisdiction. And you have rural properties that will fall into various types of categories. And there's quite a range in Kansas, all the way in the more remote rural areas to no county zoning, to zoning restrictions and ordinances in small little communities. So it's really kind of all over the board.
And what are a few of those common zoning classifications?
Well, the common one is agriculture, and that preserves farmland and livestock production and open space. And you might run into restrictions in an area that's zoned agricultural, such as minimum lot sizes, so minimum acreage to put a single home on it, limits on non-agricultural commercial use, such as a commercial event type venue, and potential limits on livestock density. You know, one of the big issues historically in Kansas has been concentrated hog operations, not so much on the cattle side, but concentrated hog operations, and whether that violates a local rule. So that's what agriculture basically means in terms of zoning.
And what about rural residential?
Well, that's a hybrid of residential and some limited agricultural activity. And here's where you really do see some minimum lot sizes here. It's often larger lot sizes, maybe 3, 5, or 10 acres. And there'll be some restrictions on subdivisions, regulations on accessory buildings. So if you want to put up a cabin, you want to put up like a granny house, a guest house, you want to put up even a barn, you're probably going to have to go to the county and get some type of permit, or it may not even be permitted.
What about the category exclusive farm use? Does that mean no buildings?
Yeah, that strictly limits non-ag development to protect high-value farmland. And so we'll see this in certain areas that do have high values on farmland, and there's severe restrictions on residential buildings, and often only one per parcel, and virtually no commercial and no industrial use is allowed in an exclusive farm use jurisdiction.
Beforehand, you mentioned that sometimes there are really no county zoning ordinances or regulations, and does that mean it's just a free-for-all?
No, not quite. It does offer the most freedom from zoning, but you still have to check your county level building codes and health codes, maybe for a septic system or a well. And also you always want to check deed restrictions. There can be certain types of covenantal restrictions and easements on deeds, and we always want to check those too.
Roger, what do you think are some important things that producers, or really anyone that's wanting to live in rural Kansas or rural parts of the United States, should make sure they check through?
Well, I think the big one here is to research the property zoning. And the most reliable information is going to come directly from local government, not just the seller or the real estate agency. So first of all, determine if your property is inside some type of city limits, a township, or is solely under county jurisdiction. Know who you're dealing with first. And in rural areas, the county planning and zoning department is usually the correct authority. And then I think probably what you want to get is your assessor's parcel number. So the county assessor is going to have your number for your parcel. And you'll need that to search records. You can usually get that from the listing agent or the county assessor's website. In many of the counties, you can find it there. And then call or visit the county planning and zoning department. Give them your parcel number and your intended use, and they can confirm the current zoning and provide official zoning ordinance and tell you if your plans are permitted or require a permit or some type of prohibition might apply. And then zoning, remember, is just one layer. As I indicated a moment ago, you also have to check the deed for restricted covenants and look up easements that might apply to a portion of the property, and that can restrict your usage too.
How could that be restricted?
Well, a prior owner may have have given an easement away to, say, an energy company, and it runs with the deed to the land, and so it's going to restrict your use of the property because it's already burdening the property. It was done by a prior owner. So you want to make sure that what your planned use is for your property is not barred by some type of deed restriction like that. And again, to reiterate, that is in addition to what government zoning rules might be in place or local ordinances. So you just have to go that extra step to determine what restrictions apply.
If the zoning isn't matching what someone is wanting to do with their property, can they easily change it?
Well, you can seek a variance. If it's from zoning or an ordinance, you can seek some type of variance from that. Now, that's a process that you have to go through. And it may cost something if you're going to have to hire an attorney to kind of help you on your case. Some of the small rural communities have some pretty restrictive rules, and we need to make sure as to whether we can have certain types of livestock within the town limits. What's permitted and what's not permitted. Sometimes we have strange definitions for livestock, and what we normally would think of as livestock may not be livestock, or the other way around. Something we think is not really livestock might be barred by some type of local ordinance that covers livestock and certain types of animals that includes what you have. So we always want to make sure that we go through the process to check that. And that is a process that can take time.
Do you often see that there's a lot of variation between counties?
Oh, there is. Yeah. So, at the counties, it's just based on what their policy is and what the geography is in their area. And even in parts of Kansas where the water issue out west can be an issue, that'll restrict certain other types of uses too that we don't see in the eastern part of the state. So the bottom line, I would come back to this, is you never want to buy a rural property banking on a successful rezoning, if you have to go through that route, or never buy a property that you don't know what the rules are. Only purchase property that is already zoned for your essential needs and what your purpose is for that property.
If someone is wanting to try the rezoning pathway, how do they go about doing that?
Well, I would suggest that they consult the local planning and zoning department to first confirm that the property's current legal status aligns with what they want to do. And if they're out of bounds with what the local rules are, you probably should get an attorney to help you through that process, because that has a lot of unique characteristics to it. And you might miss something unless you have somebody that's professionally trained and has experience in handling variances from zoning rules. So you want to avoid a regulatory nightmare when you buy a rural property. And these are things that we tend not to think about when we are purchasing that rural property. We're thinking of what our dream is, and we're not thinking of the things that could block our dream. So I always want to make sure that we check the boxes here, so to speak, and so that we're not surprised.
And Roger, with rezoning, which you have talked about in your article, which I will link in today's show notes on agtoday.net, but within there is one step of the process if someone's wanting to rezone and get a new classification that involves public comment. And so is this something where people also need to go meet with that committee?
Well, it's pretty difficult. It's a difficult process, especially in rural areas where local governments tend to prioritize preserving the area's current character. There will be some sort of comprehensive or master land use plan, And you're going to have to align in any proposed rezoning with that long-term vision of the plan. And if your change contradicts it, you're probably not going to get approved. And then, of course, because it is it's a process you have to apply for. There's going to be a formal application that you're going to have to fill out. There'll be fees that you have to pay, and you're going to have to submit your detailed plans, particularly if it's some type of business activity, non-farm business activity you want to run on your property, because then there'll be traffic concerns and so forth, and the county's going to want to be, or the locality is going to want to be aware of that. And then you're going to have to present your case to the planning commissions or zoning board, whatever the case might be, and the members of the community will have an opportunity to voice their concerns about that. And strong community resistance can sometimes be a pretty common hurdle in rural areas. So just I would say be prepared for the process.
So Roger, as we conclude today's conversation, what are those key points you'd really like people to keep in mind if they're wanting to buy some rural property?
Well, the dirt's in the details, as it often is. And I'd say before you sign a single document, you want to perform a thorough due diligence on that property's existing zoning classification, as I mentioned, and figure out what the permitted uses are and any restricted covenants. And that's what we should do every time we buy a rural property. That's absolutely essential. Don't rely on a rezoning process, because that is risky and it's costly. So if you do your due diligence in advance, you're going to be better off.
If people do want to read more on this topic, what is the best way to do that?
I have an article that's posted to the Ag Manager website at K-State through the Department of Ag Econ, and people can find it there.
Roger, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
That was K-State and Washburn law professor Roger McEowen. His article titled Acreage Anxiety, Zoning Issues That Can Kill Your Rural Dream will be linked in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we continue our show talking about the Rural Technology Innovation Assistant Program with Executive Director of the K-State Technology Development Institute, Jeff Tucker. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we do.
Jeff, first just wanting to talk about the Technology Development Institute. What is it?
Technology Development Institute, or TDI as I usually refer to it. TDI was born out of the idea of helping to diversify the state's economy. 40 years ago, we are 40 years this year. We reside within the College of Engineering here at K-State, and we are full-time working with business and industry every day. We provide product and process technology development assistance efforts. We help commercialize technologies. We work with everybody from innovators who have an idea to entrepreneurs trying to grow their business, to small and large technology or manufacturing companies. Sometimes we play different roles. So for the really small innovator, we are an engineering resource for them. For the small to medium-sized companies, we focus on developing technologies, being a resource for them, being a pair of hands or having expertise that they don't have. And then for really large organizations, we're essentially like a skunk works for them. I have a team of full-time 12 staff, all from industry, working with industry every day. We are innovators, we're engineers, designers, entrepreneurs, and economic development people. We reside in Manhattan, Kansas, off of main campus in a 22,000 square foot facility. About half of it is prototype and fabrication space. The other half is for staff and client meeting space. We prototype and build equipment. We fabricate machines. We test things. We break things. Anything that is going to help our Kansas innovators and small companies be more globally competitive is what we do.
We want to focus in on the Rural Technology Innovation Assistant Program that's with TDI. And what is this program?
So this program was born out of, again, many years of working with business and industry across rural parts of Kansas. And what we realized is that, in order to grow a successful manufacturing or technology-based company, you need access to, things like expertise and capital and workforce and infrastructure and things like that. And so you're sort of have that critical mass of all those resources in urban spaces, but in rural space, you don't have that. You may not have it in your community, you may not have it in your county, sometimes you may not even have it in your region. So what this program is focused on is building connectivity to those innovation resources where there's a lack of critical mass of those resources. So it's an accelerant to helping innovators tap into expertise that they may not otherwise have in their community or immediate access to in their region.
How do you make that connection as someone who's based in Riley County with maybe someone that's all the way out west in Wichita County?
So good question. What we've been doing over the last 40 years, and from my own experience 30 plus years, is building relationships and networks across the state. We work with statewide resources. We work with the Kansas Department of Commerce. We work with statewide entrepreneurial resources like Network Kansas. We work with regional development organizations throughout the state. We work with economic development organizations, whether they're county or community. We're tied into other higher education institutions across the state. So a lot of what we do is referral business that comes to us when people are trying to figure out how to innovate, how to develop a prototype, how to develop or design something. They end up on our doorstep more often than not in some way, shape, or form.
So how can people in rural communities use this program?
Through the generosity of the Patterson Family Foundation, was put in place as a 2-year program. And what it's focused on is, providing design and prototyping services, helping to do market research, look at intellectual property, anything that a technology-based company, regardless of what industry they're in, would be interested in, or, it's a set of technical services that they can access. What makes it unique is that, again, through the Patterson Family Foundation, we are able to offer a subsidized level of service to the innovators and entrepreneurs, right? So instead of having to pay a full price for, these type of resources, which can be fairly expensive just because of the type of skill sets and expertise that we have, as well as capabilities, we're able to subsidize up to about 50% of the cost of a project. And it's all focused on, the idea of helping rural innovators and entrepreneurs have access to resources they just may not normally have access to in their community. And the other thing that's unique about what we do is, there are a number of business incubators across Kansas, and especially in rural spaces. Entrepreneurship is seen as a major way to grow our rural communities. And the reality is that most of those business incubators don't have technologists in them. And so they don't have maybe the resources or the expertise to make the design trade-offs that somebody would need when they're developing a new product or technology. And that's, again, sort of the role that we play. Is we do a lot of proof of concept work where we help people, evaluate the feasibility and the marketability of their technology. We look at the economic viability of it. So we wear many different hats in the process of helping them evaluate an idea and then figure out the best path forward, sort of where they are on their journey, right? And a lot of times they maybe think that they have to put a whole bunch of money into, a prototype, but that may not be the right strategy based on what they're actually trying to do. So it's really sitting down with them and starting to understand what they're trying to achieve, going through that process, that discovery process, and then charting a path forward with them that may engage either our business services or our engineering technology services, depending on what's the right next step for them. And we can help them. Again, if it's not a resource that we have here at TDI, we can tap into, the university's expertise. We have a 30 plus year network of partners and suppliers and vendors that we can, access through this effort. So these resources sort of help those early stage people figure out what's the right next step for them, and then reduce some of the upfront cost of taking that next step.
What have been some of the types of projects you've worked on at TDI?
It varies a lot. I mean, since we moved into our current facility in 1995, we've done about 3,200 projects with about 800 different clients and organizations. As a side note, we also run a continuous internship program that has employed about 750 interns through that time. So these are business and engineering interns that get that experience. But back to your question, the industries that we work with very widely. They're agriculture, they're industrial equipment, they're transportation, they're the leisure industry. A lot of things that we do are for the business to business world. We do some commercial retail work. And if we have any avid hunters out there, bow hunters, we've done a fair amount of the product development work for Tinks. But we've also helped build platforms for precision agriculture and look at new ways of harvesting and, planting seeds and stuff like that. So, we typically are focused on building the platforms and the physical hardware and equipment that may be driven by precision agriculture or the new topic of, AI today. So,
who is eligible for using the Rural Technology Innovation Assistance Program?
So it is predominantly focused on small companies, innovators, and entrepreneurs. It is eligible to people who live in rural Kansas and actually western Missouri also. There are 10 counties in Kansas that are not qualified for that. So if you live, in a county, that is not in that space, people that would live in Saline, Reno, Sedgwick, Butler, Riley, Shawnee, Douglas, Johnson, and Leavenworth, they are not eligible, but anybody else in Kansas is eligible. It's only because those counties, by the way that the Patterson Family Foundation qualifies their catchment, their service catchment, they don't fall into that area.
If someone is working on a project that they think TDI might be able to help them with, what's the process of getting that assistance?
It's really pretty easy. It's just connecting with us. We connect either, for me personally, they can send an email at jwtuck@ksu.edu, or they can connect to us through our website, which is at K-State.edu /TDI. If they want to learn more about the grant, they can also find a page on our site about that grant as well.
Jeff, anything else?
I think the other thing I would just want to make mention is that a big part of this project is not only about helping the innovators and the entrepreneurs, but an equally strong part of it is about supporting our young innovators who want to stay in Kansas, who are looking for opportunities to stay in Kansas. So there is an internship program tied to this that is eligible for business and engineering students working here at TDI. They have that opportunity if they are from a rural community. So the Patterson Family Foundation is genuinely driven by trying to support our rural communities, and that means not only today with today's innovators, but tomorrow's as well. And so the hope is that they can connect with those companies, those innovators, and find opportunity to stay in Kansas rather than having to leave.
Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
You bet. And thank you for the opportunity. We look forward to hearing from people that have innovative ideas.
That was Executive Director of the K-State Technology Development Institute, Jeff Tucker. The resources that he mentioned in today's show, I will link in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Wednesday show with the Beef Cattle Institute's Brad White, Bob Larson, and Dustin Pendell as they discuss the ideal bull-to-cow ratio.
Is it 1 to 25? Is it the yearling rule of thumb is 1 cow per month of age once they pass their BSE, right, Bob?
And as far as I think that's a pretty good starting place.
And so what is it for mature bulls?
Mature bulls, my personal preference is to get it as high as possible, as many cows as possible. For one thing, to keep my bull cost.
What's
cow.
That number? I was going to ask you a number.
I know. All right, I'm going to say it, and it'll probably 40. No, I'm going to say 35. I honestly think we ask bulls to not do as well as they can, because I think most typically it's people use 25 or 30. I think they can do more. But I think that it takes some continued observation. If I'm going to turn 1 bull per 35 cows, and then again, it matters whether we're talking about single bull pasture or multiple bull pasture, I think I need to monitor pretty closely, because I'm asking him to breed, so say in the first 21 days of the breeding season when no one is pregnant yet. And so there's 35 cows out there. If I've got them all cycling within the first 21 days, he's breeding about 1.5 cows a day. And I think bulls can do that. But if he's lame, if he's doesn't have much libido, if, there's reasons why he wouldn't breed 1.5 a day. So I need to get out there and have some way to kind of monitor that bull activity, which is easier said than done because some of the breeding takes place at night and those types of things. So I want as many cows per bull as I can manage, because then also maybe I'll invest more in the bulls themselves and the time, because now I'm a little bit scared that I don't want a problem to occur. So I'm going to spend some time watching to make sure that he is breeding 1.5 cows.
That's your risk management, is you have to be able to observe, because most of the things that go wrong with bulls, you can observe them visually.
Yeah.
So if he has a broken penis, prepuce that's out or extended, if he can't walk, if he can't see, if he's got some a lot of the things, if he's past his BSE.
A lot of things we can see.
But I got to check it.
Application, yep. Because, and whether that's a small producer or a really large producer. I've talked to some guys, in large range country, when you're talking about, well, that would be guys on horses spending all day to go out in the pasture. And I can think of one situation where that was the situation, large range type situations. And there were a couple of pastures that were close enough that they did have cowboys out checking quite frequently, and a couple pastures that they didn't see them until the end of the grazing season. And they tended to see more bull problems in those pastures that they didn't observe, because when they observed a problem, they did intervene and, bring a bull out or do something different. And so we had this conversation of, well, in an ideal situation, we would do that, but there's some pastures we're just not going to get to.
Yeah.
And it's understood.
Well, and it's different ways to manage risk, which we were actually talking about a little bit before we got on the podcast. Was 85% of the turkeys that are sold in the U.S. are sold between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is a large portion of the industry, which that 85% number actually matches up to, on cow-calf operations, about 85% of their income is sold from weaned calves. So Dustin, what do we do to manage that risk, especially in years like this where our prices are really volatile and I want to sell them at the right time, not the wrong time? How do I manage that risk of feeder calves?
Dustin, tell us when the price is going to be the
highest. Or if you just want to pick a date and tell us what
date and a price and
a price.
Yeah. So now your question is referring. We were talking about bulls, and all of a sudden we started talking about turkeys. Well, I just wanted to go back and make a quick comment about Bob's talking about some of those producers in large ranges, right? That they don't see their cows until it's at the end of the season. But I mean that's managing that risk. The way I view that is it's an economic problem, right? You get opportunity costs versus the benefits. And if you don't have the time, you don't have the resources to check, it's pretty high costs, but then you got to offweigh that with the potential revenue losses later. And so I think they're making that decision, whether they realize it or not.
That was part of the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast. You can hear the full episode by following the link in today's show notes. That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.